DuSable Museum partnering with the Illinois Humanities Council for today's event. And I want to thank Dawson, who will give closing remarks today. We are deeply honored to have this conversation with the great historian, educator, and civil rights fighter and griot Timuel D. He just received an award earlier today at St. Savina. He was there when Cornel West spoke, and that reward was for a lifetime of service, leadership, and for documenting and making history. And it said, "You are a Chicago treasure." Mr. Black is a native of Birmingham, Alabama, though he's been in Chicago in most of his life. And what a life. He's going to be 100 years old in December. He attended Burke Elementary School, as did I, here in Chicago, and DuSable High School, as did I. And he went to Roosevelt University for his bachelor's degree and University of Chicago for his master's degree. He served in the Army during World War II. Afterward, he became a social worker, and subsequently he taught in high schools and colleges. And along the way, to this day, he's been a warrior for social justice. All of his personal papers and photographs are archived in the Carter G. Woodson Library, and a few of his photos are in the collection today. And all of these photos are relevant to either DuSable or the Bronzeville area that enriched DuSable and made it the school that it was. He has authored books on the Great Migration. He has a new book coming out very soon, and it's called Sacred Ground. Sacred Ground. So we welcome you, Tim. So today we're going to be discussing Tim Black's life experiences and the educational situation at DuSable High School that made successes of so many students graduating there since 1935 for so many decades. And for example, he started in the class of 1937, that's when he graduated, and the students who he graduated with included Nat King Cole, Red Fox, and John H. Johnson, who went on to publish so many magazines and has had so much success in real estate, and his building was the 11-story building down on Michigan Avenue, and he just was the first millionaire recognized by Forbes magazine. So Tim Black studied with all of those people in 1937. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences, say with John H. Johnson to start?
Well, John H. Johnson, who was a migrant from Arkansas to Chicago, was a very well organized. His mother left back his father because she wanted her son to have the advantages of the North. This is pretty typical of that period. And so they moved to Chicago. Now, I met John when I'll tell this story to fit in where, when I graduated from Burke School in 1932 with Bill, well, anyway, after who became the first Internal Revenue agent in the country, Black Internal Revenue. Bill Green, William Tecumseh Green. If you look at my book, Bridges of Memory, in the book, you'll see a picture of Bill and I graduated that particular day in 1932. Now, I went to Inglewood because if you live south of 47th Street and west of Cottage Grove, and in that period we were called the Black Belt by Robert Abbott.
That's right. And
John H. Johnson was part of that period. And so, I'm telling my story a little bit to say I got to meet him.
Absolutely.
I went from Burke School, which most of my fellow students, except for Bill Green and others, I went to Inglewood. Most of us at Burke went to Inglewood, or Hyde Park, and a few went to Wendell Phillips. There was no DuSable. And so, most of the African Americans, the black folks, Negroes as we were called by ourselves then, were white collar people. That is, they worked in businesses and had businesses and were professional. And my father worked at the stockyard. Now, that was considered blue collar, but lower class in terms of class. I'm not talking about the way we were by the other group. And so I was kind of hung out with the hoodlum type guys, the 58th Street guys, and that's another story. And so that was the blue collar types. We were not hoodlums, but we were kind of tough. And most of the whites, which Inglewood was almost all white, were Irish Catholic children of immigrants from Europe. They were the first generation to be from Europe. My generation were the first full generation of African Americans to leave the South, fleeing the South, to be able to fight back with the Ku Klux Klan if they stood a chance of being lynched, and to be able to vote. And so we were kind of snooty too. And so at Inglewood, the teachers didn't want us there, as well as the administration. And so they would say, where did your father work? Because most of the time then, women, regardless of their training, didn't work. They worked at home 24 hours a day with the children at home. And so when they would come to me, I would say, where did your father work? Stockyard. Oh, then they would laugh. Not my fellow students, but the white kids. And so I began to do things that were not correct. And one day, walking down the hall, I don't know what it was I did, but I was stopped and gave my right name to the guy with me. That's another story. He didn't. And he wound up his mother wound up on a lot of property in Hyde Park. So I went to the principal, who was racist, and he said, bring your father or mother up to explain. And when my father, he didn't know my father well enough to understand. That was the reason my mother was glad for him to leave the South. When he was telling my father how he should treat me, my father said, look here, let me tell you something. You don't tell me, I pay your salary. You don't tell me how to treat my children. I know I'm going to get a whipping when I get home. But that was his attitude towards anybody telling him what to do, particularly if they happen to be white. So I forged my mama's name and went to Phillips. The first guy that I met that I didn't know was was Nat King Cole. I didn't know it, but I knew And then in that same building at that same time was this good-looking, smart young man, John H. Johnson. And he was so well organized because of his parents, his mother particularly, that he was a gentleman. Now, a gentleman, dressed right, talked right, walked right, and everybody thought of John as being a successful person in the future, and the teachers treated him that way. Bill Green helped him to learn how to write. Bill Green was a very bright guy from Burke School. His father worked in the post office, mother was a professional person. And he was so well respected that we kind of knew he was going to be a success. We didn't know he was going to be the kind of success, John H. Johnson, that he became. But we knew he was going to be a successful person. Now tell that story, and the teachers, most of the teachers were not African American, most of them white. They were so concerned about our future that they treated us like scholars. We have a awards made out to one, Mary Harris Scholarship Fund. And so when John graduated in 1936, when I left Englewood because of the fact of how my father talked to the principal, I flunked a half grade. But he was just a semester, but we were friends. And he moved on then to great success, starting when he started to work for Supreme Liberty Life. They liked him very well too and taught him how to be a businessman. And to go a long story going forward, while he was there, he began to do writing. And while he was still a very young man, I don't know whether John was 21 or 22, he formed a competitive magazine. There was the Leaders Digest that the white folks had. John formed the Negro Digest. And that started him on his successful career. To at one time, he was one of the wealthiest persons, not just black, in the United States. Now, that continuation of friendship, we continued to be friends, and he was like that. So that when people would come from out of town, later my daughter and Ralph Metcalf, who were friends, worked for him when it became evident. But when people would come from out of town, he had become so famous across the nation, they would say, "Oh, you went to Phillips and DuSable?" I said, "Yeah, do you know John Johnson?" And I said, "Yes. Can we go down to where his office is?" Where? I said, "Sure." And when I would take them to, before the office was downtown and then downtown, and I would walk in, if he was talking on the telephone, he would say, "I stopped, I'll have to call you later." One of my friends would come in. Now, that kind of experience at DuSable and in what we call the Black Belt was an ordinary thing. We continued our friendship because of our experience first in Phillips. You see, the new building is now called DuSable. A group of women used to meet at the George Cleveland Hall Library. And when we were so crowded that they built this new building to keep us African Americans contained in the neighborhood, in the black belt. Well, they had a fire at first, and we quickly were moved up to the new building, and they hadn't even completed it. And these women, these British households, they demanded that the new building be named after the first non-native to settle on the banks of what we now call the Chicago River. His mother was Haitian, his father was French, he'd never been in slavery, and he engaged himself in business. And the name of that, from his French, was Jean-Baptiste Pointe, and they named it, that building where DuSable is, they named it that. First it was New Winter Phillips, then they changed it, and people began to make fun and say disabled, that means disabled. So they changed the pronunciation to DuSable. But in that building, so many successful people had their beginning, because the community was a solid community regardless of where you worked or where your business happened to be. And the musicians, I just yesterday was at Dye School telling them the history of Captain Dye. It was a solid community where education was not only provided but demanded, because the community would boast about how their neighbor students and how their students were doing. Mm-hmm. So John H. Johnson is a dramatic example of what that building, what that school produced, that became so successful that it inspired later generations to try and do the same. And so we have the great musicians, mm-hmm. the great businessmen, yes. and all.
Yes, and I have a quote by a student of yours, because not only was Timuel Black a student, but he taught at DuSable, and this student named William T. Daniels, he was an arbitrator and mediator, and he graduated from DuSable in 1958. And he said that DuSable had a quality education that was beyond just measure. There was nothing wrong, it was just a wonderful education. And he loved studying with you. You would always ask him about his homework, and he talked about how everyone there studied hard. And they also went to I forgot what it was called when we were there, but on Friday nights they would have social hour with dancing. And so it was a full, complete experience. And also, Wanda Bridgeforth talked about how she graduated in 1939 and what a wonderful educational experience.
Right. We just lost her, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And we hear so much about Renaissance 2010, and we hear about No Child Left Behind. But we had all this success back then. But I need to make one correction. When I spoke about John H. Johnson, I mentioned his successes. For some reason I said real estate. He was not really known for real estate. That was Dempsey Travis. So
DuSable also.
Yes. But he did have, beyond his magazines, he had a radio station and that type of thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about Nat King Cole?
Well, when I was seated in our homeroom, Nat King Cole was seated right behind me. And there were so many young musicians, talented young musicians. He would play, we had a upright piano in that room. And that played piano. And I would wonder, why in the world is he always talking about music? Why shouldn't he be talking about algebra and geometry? But the guys and gals around him would come in and sit down because he was so talented that even though they were talented, like Dorothy Donegan, I could name them, but they shared their thoughts about music. Now, most of them were classically trained, but they knew that more than likely they would not be able to get into the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. So they used their talents in the creative spirituality of music, of black music, particularly gospel and jazz, of course, and blues, and that was every year Captain Dad used to have a thing called hijinks. Hijinks would be a whole weekend in that building, and Duke Ellington and all those kind of people would come because they thought they might get some talent. Now, Nat was a nice guy and a gentleman, and I wondered why in the world is he not taking more, but his music was so good, his piano playing, we didn't know he could sing. We didn't. He didn't start singing till way later, that's another story. He played piano so well, and his model for playing piano was Earl Father Hines, who liked this young man playing. And so that atmosphere now, I would come to school just to hear that play because it was so good. Point is, that's a joke. But the talent was in a talented environment. His talent was so great that the others came to learn from Nat King Cole, a piano, various versions. I'm not a musician, so I can't talk to musicians. But Nat was a gentleman like John S. Johnson, a nice guy. And he saw a future. And unfortunately, because DuSable was so overcrowded, we had two shifts. And those in my division, Nat and others, we were in the earlier shift. And Nat was able, like other young, to get a job, a gig as they call them, on 58th Street with this group. And then he was out late and he couldn't get to school on time, and he and his father came up one day to ask if they'd be transferred to the later shift. And this teacher, happened to be a Negro, said, no, we don't have any. He didn't come here to learn how to play piano, he came here to learn. And in the last year of his DuSable career, Nat left school because his family, this is in the period of the Great Depression, they needed the money. And he left school a year before his actual graduation. Now, he always talked about going to DuSable. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, someone who had been there told the others that he didn't graduate. And he was very hurt by that. But Nat Cole was also, like John S. Johnson, an inspiration. And Captain Dad was, you had to play the music, and you had, as Dorothy Donegan told me, well, I was talking with her later, she said, Cap taught discipline, and he taught teamwork. And he was also insisted that those who would be in his band or under his instruction had to also do well and go on to college.
That's right.
Now he had scholarship, he had friends in black colleges and universities. And he would arrange for his, like, when I'm thinking about the brothers, two brothers, Jim and
Jimmy,
Ellis, the Ellis
Morris
brothers.
Ellis.
Ellis brothers, yeah, and all of them. They went on to college, and then when I was overseas during World War II, many of them had been. Now that, because he was telling, his first wife was a tap dancer, a little older than him. And when they went to California, the band broke up, and that's another story. The manager took the money and left, and the band broke up, and some of the guys and gals couldn't come back home because the folks didn't have the money to bring them back. And Nat, with several of the guys, two of the guys in the band and bigger band, formed what became known as the King Cole Trio. I forget the drummer and the bass, the fiddler.
Could I interrupt? I just wanted to say about the Nat Cole Trio.
The
They
trio.
were the first ones to actually do the format that we see in jazz, where everyone plays and then they take a solo. That began with Nat Cole Trio. And Nat Cole also was the first black man to have a television show
Yeah,
on television.
that's right.
But the sponsors, it was runaway success, it was integrated. And we have a video that we did show of that with Billy, a little boy named Billy Preston, on one of the segments from the show. And, but they took it off the air just because due to racism. But it was a runaway success. Yes, that was Nat King Cole, the first black man to have a television show. And then as you finish, if you tell us about another black man with a television show that you shared classes with, Red Fox, as you finish up talking about that.
Who was that?
Red Fox.
Red Fox. Red Fox was a little after, in the same period, but I forget how they got to call him Red Fox. But he was also in that group of musicians, people who went to DuSable, graduated. And I'm trying to remember, when you get to be 99 young people, you might be as sharp as you like for it to be. But he was also one of the musicians who popularized jazz music across the nation and into Europe. Now they knew Red a good deal over in the Netherlands, particularly.
He was a band leader, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, band leader. He studied with Captain Dykes. He was a band leader, among other things.
But I guess some of us, the reason we didn't, this school was come home to school and hear the band. But in that period, because of the music, partly because of the music, and because of the great athletes, see, the Globetrotters, the Harlem Globetrotters, were not from Harlem. They were from Phillips and DuSable High School. The second, I'm trying to think of his name, who graduated in 1940. He was the second black player in the National League basketball, the NBA, National Basketball Association.
Was that Sweetwater?
Huh?
Sweetwater Clifton?
I forget what his name, but he was the first.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been to college. He went to Tennessee State and then to Xavier, and he was so good that Abe Saperstein was able to convince him to leave college and go on the team. And there are others that follow that tradition. I'm simply speaking from those that I remember and knew.
Mm-hmm.
DuSable was a producer of businessmen, and I wish I could name all the successful businessmen and scholars that came out of DuSable. And so that building, and we have landmarked both Wendell Phillips and DuSable. Phillips seem to be doing pretty good.
Mhm.
The threat is to take the name of DuSable and transfer other names and put DuSable behind. Our mission, because of the tradition and because of the quality of people who have graduated, and like this young lady here, Alice, who wants to help preserve not just the building, but the legacy, the history. The father of what became the first lady, after the first lady, Michelle Obama's father, graduated from DuSable High School.
In 1953, you can see her father in the 1953 yearbook where he's sculpting a project in art class. And that was around the time that Margaret Burroughs was there. She taught there for 30 years. And we'd love to hear a story about that.
Yeah,
Just a minute though. I would like to continue the photos going past. And when we have Q&A, you can ask us about any photos that you see go past as Mr. Black speaks. And also, could you also tell us, how was it possible to have such success in an area now that has so many deserts? We have food deserts, we have culture deserts, we had so much culture back then. Can you talk about that? What was the climate? I hear you could even sleep in Washington Park on a really hot night. Can you talk about all of that?
Oh yes, because we felt a sense of community. We respected one another. Now there were some differences, but it never occurred to us. We would walk to the Regal and the Savoy and all of the nightclubs. Now when that was playing on 58th Street, we weren't old enough to go in that tavern. So we would stand outside and listen to him, and he'd come out and say, "How did I sound?" And we'd tell him whether he sounded good or bad. But there was a sense of community in the community. And part of that was due to the kind of relationship we had in our school. And high school was one of those. When DuSable came into being, that encouraged a lot of African American students who were going to Inglewood or going to Hyde Park to leave Hyde Park or Inglewood to transfer to DuSable, because they felt that the community felt a sense of the unity that would come. And so in Inglewood and sometimes Hyde Park, they felt a sense of isolation. And people like the Murphys, Johnny Murphy, whose father had a hair care business, Murphy Hair Care. Those kind of people left those swanky Hyde Park schools, although not all of them, but came to DuSable and also felt that sense of unity. So the unity that existed in the community broke when during and after World War II, a new population began to come. And that population was very different from the people in the first Great Migration. Most of the people in the first Great Migration fled the South for three reasons. One, to be able to fight back against the Ku Klux Klan, and people like my daddy would have been there. Two, to be able to vote, and because we were united and compact, we voted. That was a part of our culture. Did you vote? And we elected black candidates who were responsible to us. Now many blacks came out of DuSable, like Harold Washington and Vincent Travis. We felt the sense of our power, and we had a theme. We put you, pardon my vulgarity, won't say it though. We put you in, we'll take you out. So the politicians were obligated. And we had businesses, whether they were white or black, we had a theme. If you don't harm me, we had other things, we put you in, we take out, and we had a thing, don't spend your money where you can't work. So we had small businesses along 47th Street, particularly, but 51st Street, Hyde Park Boulevard, the Garfield Boulevard, and all those streets were part of our economic. And so we felt a sense of the future because we could see the future. And people like John H. Johnson, who had a business mind, went into those businesses, small businesses, and elevated to the top. But music was a part of our business also. So the musicians could play, as many of them did, on the South Side and get the experience of audience and then move their music, not them, not their bodies, to the North Side to make the bigger money, and then to Europe and other places. So the combination of talents was there because the community was a united community. And we went to Washington Park, and this is before too much of air conditioning and all, and we would just go to Washington Park and stay all night. Sleep in the park.
Sleep in the park.
Sleep in the park. That sounds incredible, doesn't it? But we get up there the next morning and play softball, or play baseball, or run around the track. There was that feeling of security. And the feeling of security was also carried by our feeling of relationships and responsibility to one another. And there was a cohesiveness because of the entertainment talent that existed and came to the neighborhood, even though we might not live in the neighborhood.
And in Washington Park, I remember there would be speakers there, literally on soapboxes, and people surrounding them talking. They would speak their mind.
Yeah,
They talk a little bit about
what they call the Washington Park Forum that existed right across the street from Burke School. And people like W.B. Du Bois and Paul Robeson and all those people would come to talk to us, young people, about their experience all over the world and the need for us to be successful academically, but to not forget our heritage, not forget the South Side, not forget our school. And so they would encourage us because we had the feeling, why would they come here as well known and rich as they are? They felt a sense of responsibility to us who they felt could be as successful as they were. So we had all those famous people, women as well, Mary McLeod Bethune, and all those people would come and Washington Park Forum and talk to us. And that united us. And during the Great Depression, if you didn't have there was no Social Security. And if you lost your job, you might get work. And they would unify so that somebody might say, Miss Jones just got put out. And we would laugh and say, let's go put her back in. And we would do that. because we felt that sense of responsibility to our
That-
community.
The rent party, when people would have the rent parties, that type of thing.
Huh?
Are you talking about rent parties?
Yeah.
Yeah, rent parties, yeah.
Well, I'd like to have some comments or questions, because in this audience, we have people who know as much or more than Tim Black.
Yes.
That might have some
I hope
questions
that
and share some of their experience.
I hope that you've been looking at some of these photos and you might have questions about that. I just wanted to ask Mr. Black about the cultural climate back then, when we had the Art Center, 38th in Michigan, the WPA, Eleanor Roosevelt came and christened this place. We had all of that arts, and also Richard Bright, and he was part of a writing group there, and the Vivian Harsh Library was the first library for black people in Chicago, just like DuSable was the first high school for black, built specifically for black. So it seems to me there was a synergy. But right now we have a desert when it comes to culture, and we keep getting things, people come in from, elsewhere, and they say, well, I'm going to come to Chicago, and I'm going to start things like the Arts Incubator. I mean, great work, but we used to all do that on our own. Can you talk about the culture and how we had the writers and everyone here, so many people, Langston Hughes even came here for a long while, and how that enriched everyone because we had culture and art at our fingertips?
Oh, yes, well, we had it because we had the talent of people like Charles White, Margaret Burroughs, and many others. I can't remember all of them. They'll keep. And so during the Great Depression, the WPA and the PWA came to keep those brilliant, young, creative people from organizing against the Great Depression as it was. So they organized, I forget the name of the writers, I think Negro Writers Association, I think it was. And young people like Lorraine Hansberry back, and all those would meet regularly at the George Cleveland Hall Library with older talent like Langston Hughes to tell them about not only the talent but the bigger world that they would be. And the people like me, Tim Black, would be able to brag about I knew these people. And so that culture which we inherited from our ancestors, music, art, and the painted, sculpture, all of those were things that we enjoyed. And once a year, that was in the late 20s, and then the Bud Billiken Parade would carry, the artists would walk down the street carrying their, or either we would stop at various places where that art was on exhibit. So art as a part of the culture, music as a part of the culture, was part of the inspiration and information that people with less talent like me could enjoy and feel inspired to continue to learn a few things about it. I
Yes.
wish I could
And
give
you
all
were-
the details.
You were
But
quite an
culture
entrepreneur.
was very important.
Yes, and you were quite an activist as well yourself. Here's a picture of you with Dr. King and others.
Oh.
And you also were involved in labor.
Then with Dr. King, we were organizing labor in Chicago before. And that was Dr. King and A. Philip Randolph. And later, we became the organizing for the March on Washington. Yeah.
And also,
This is taken in 1960.
speaking of labor, another labor giant here, Addie Wyatt, she went to DuSable.
Oh, Eddie.
Yes.
Yeah. She in her.
She was known to say that DuSable was where she learned how to speak her mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And she was really very much respected. She and her husband.
Yes.
And they both graduated from DuSable.
And you were an advisor to both King and Obama. Can you tell us about that?
Was that?
You were an advisor to not only King, but President Obama as well.
That's right.
Yes.
When this brilliant, good-looking young man, I had worked at the university for his wife when she was, for Michelle, when she was on staff. She had left her law practice, and was on staff at the University of Chicago. I had done how you organize community for some of the medical students who wanted to do volunteer work out in the Black Belt, Brownsville. So when, I don't know when they married, but when he came to Chicago with his idea that he wanted to be a community organizer, I don't know whether it was the first, but one of the first people that he asked to get to meet was a guy named Tim Black. And I, because I was impressed and inspired to have this kind of talent help to organize, continue to organize, we used to meet regularly at the Medici on 57th Street. And so, because I had learned that the best way to organize, and we did this with much organizing in the labor movement as well as the civil rights movement, was to be friendly and to be trusted by people who were already organized. And so my tactic was to, and we did this successfully all my life, frankly, to get the churches, the ministers, who had congregations already that trusted them, to bring them into the movement. And since all of them knew and felt that Tim Black was not for sale, therefore they could trust him. And so their trust in Tim Black made it easy for me to introduce Barack to people like Father Flagrant and Jeremiah Wright and others like that in the ministry. And because the congregations trusted them, he was able to start organizing. And his organizing was so successful that he then decided to go into politics. And the rest is history. And that's another story altogether.
Okay.
I do remember when he was going to run for Congress the first time, and he was going to run against Bobby Rush, and he called me to support him. I said, what in the hell are you talking about? Against Bobby Rush? No. But then when he decided to run, for Congress again, I wouldn't. But then when he decided to run for the U.S. Senate, and there are pictures of that, I supported Barack Obama, and he moved on from there to run for president. I supported him. He was with Jesse Jackson and others, that Jeremiah Wright, he joined the church, he and Michelle joined that church. And all of those young people supported him to get the nomination.
Okay.
So the history, and his father was an instrument, his father-in-law who's
A DuSable-lite.
so
Yes.
that's right. DuSable. So the history of Black Chicago from DuSable to Barack Obama is a history that we should share as people try to talk negatively about the South Side. Where else could Obama have moved from an unknown to the presidency of the United States except in Chicago? And so Michelle and I forget her name too, the advisor.
Valerie Jarrett.
Huh?
Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah, Valerie. When there was a debate about where the library should be, they wanted it on the south side of Chicago, but there was a lot of competition for that library to be in Havana or in New York. They suggested that the foundation people come and talk, see Tim Black. And so when they came and saw the pictures on the wall and all, they went back. And that was the decision. Now, that, talking about power, that carried on. But there were people who wanted that school to be retained and expanded. And they were threatening to protest. Now, in this whole prophecy is so much to tell. Providence Hospital, that's a history too. But we had our own hospital. It wasn't a county hospital. Right. Both of my children were born in Ralph Metcalf. That was our hospital. And more nurses and doctors got their training at Providence.
Very true. Yes.
So they were going to protest unless that school remained and unless they brought a trauma center to the south side. They didn't specify. And I, as an advisor, told the University of Chicago, if you don't include a trauma center and save that school, you're not going to have the President's Library in Chicago. The university decided they would do that.
I think it's a good time.
So the point is, just the last point, since both of the opposition groups knew that Tim Black was not for sale. See, as Frederick Douglass said, as he was telling Abraham Lincoln, free the slaves and win the war, because the Confederates were winning. He who pays the fiddler calls the tune. That's a fact. If I owe you, then you can stop me from doing certain things. If you owe me, and they owe us, and DuSable is something they would like to remove so that the other world and the younger people don't know that debt. We don't owe them. They owe us, and DuSable is their father.
Time for questions, please.
Comments after
questions?
Yeah. I wanted to ask Dr. Black, what's his suggestion about all of us who are baby boomers that want another black mayor?
What's your suggestion about baby boomers who want another black mayor?
Oh.
What's your suggestion?
What?
Baby boomers want another, the young generation wants another black mayor. And they want to know what your suggestions are on that.
There would have to be the organizing that I have just mentioned. And then we would have to get a person like Harold Washington to do something like it, and make that decision. And then we'd have, at this point, we would have to find friends in the Caucasian and the Hispanic community, as we did for Harold, to create a unification across race and other lines. And with the Hispanic community having been separated by the powers that be, that would be hard. Now, people like Jesus Garcia would be a person who could unify the Mexican and the Puerto Rican to come together for that purpose. That would require the kind of confidence and trust that they had when Harold Washington was running. And the candidate who would run would have to be a well-schooled, trusted individual, of which we have many.
Okay, next question, please. Yes, she has a question.
Okay, my question is that you've had such a beautiful, wonderful life. I'm just wondering, what is your most influential memory about living here in Chicago? And have you done everything you set out to do? Is there anything more that you would like to do?
The thing that I would like and try to do is share that limited experience that I have tried to convey to you, to everyone that I meet. And when I take groups from the University of Chicago on tours, most of whom are Latino or Native African and Caucasian, they are just thrilled when I take them into Phillips and DuSable and they see the pictures on the wall of all these well-known people. They are then pleased to know the history. The blacks that I talk with, the younger blacks particularly, who are not as well informed as you young people out there about that history, when they learn about that history, they are also inspired to do a community participation. For me, that's really all I want to try and do, is pass that history of your ancestors, my ancestors, so that other people across race lines, but particularly focused, when I speak to these younger people, I ask them the question, when you go shopping, what do you go looking for? They'll bum around, talk about clothes, and I say, shopping. Eventually, one will say, Mr. Black, when I go shopping, I look for the best I can find for the cheapest price. What do you think the slave traders did when they went to Africa? The best they could find for the cheapest price. We come from our African ancestry, the cream of the crop. And that cream of the crop was very best centralized and focalized for at least 2 generations in DuSable High School. The teachers were using their talent to inspire us, who didn't have much money, but we were poor, but we were not poverty-stricken. And that's a thing that proves to us that trouble don't last always. Sam Cooke went through, by the way. That we must be prepared ourselves to be able to challenge the opposition. And then we must pass that legacy of our ancestors on to other generations. Because we have to ask ourselves, why does race matter? Since most of us are DuSable, matched up against whites, the Tuskegee Airmen and yet they were rejected. That's the political idea that we have to, and we have to help our younger people, the talented young people, to not leave their history behind.
That's so true.
Let that history be a part of the stimulation as well as the information that they carry. Yes, go on to Harvard, Yale, and all that crap. But carry that history so you can brag that you are not only from the cream of the crop, but you're proven like Bill Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Daniels, when he went from DuSable, he was a student of mine. He went to the Upper Iowa University, second black to go there. He was so good looking and smart, they sent back to get his high school girlfriend. And she was on test, she was higher test than he was, but she didn't have it. So Bill has been the advisor,
Yes.
the Thurgood Marshall. And,
Yes.
you know, we could just go on and on with examples like a Bill Daniels.
And he was a student of yours.
Huh?
And he was a student of
Oh,
yours.
yeah.
We have another question now.
Well, someone said, William, you working out there at Sears Roebuck at 63rd, when it used to be 63rd and Halston. And why don't you keep that job? And he came to me and he said, in tears, he said, that's what, because he didn't have high test scores.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another story about how to wipe people out with those test scores.
Mm-hmm.
And he was smarter, but he didn't pass. And so he said, he said to me, I don't know. I said, she can't tell you what you can do. Only you can tell you what you can do. Now let's go. We got him a scholarship, a Pullman scholarship to the university. He was second. Then he became a professor at the University of Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
He was all over.
Yes, all traveled all over the world and saw the people.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And I had another student in that same
But
period
before you get
who
to
came
that-
to see, he came to me and he said, Mr. Black, did you go to the University of Colorado? I said, yeah. He said, was it hard? I said, I told you I went there, didn't I? He went on, and I was coming up out of the airport.
Yes.
Not the airport, but the, what you call it, underground, anyway.
Subway.
And I heard now in London, and somebody said, there's Mr. Black, my old teacher.
Yes.
That was this same guy who had graduated from the University of Chicago and was going to the London School of Economics.
International.
I give those examples, and you probably have not only personally those kind, but you know people, and they came from DuSable. It's not just the academics, but the feeling of friendship and kinship that
Cohesion. Yes.
we inherit.
Mr. Black, I need to interrupt you because we want some more questions. Everybody wants to
Oh,
talk.
yeah.
Yes, we have
That's
another
okay.
question right now. Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
thanks for coming, sir.
Thank you.
You spoke about the loyalty and commitment that
She has to translate that from, I'm not hearing too well.
You spoke about the commitment that the politicians back then had to the community, and the fear that they had of being, not being re-elected. Okay, they didn't, perform to our agenda or their constituents' agenda. And I wanted to know what happened to that fear between now and then today. Where you have politicians and preachers, they'll probably stand beside, Mayor Daley or Brown Emanuel, and say, I support this guy in spite of. So what happened to that fear between, then and now, do you think?
What happened to the fear that politicians had of disappointing their constituency back in the day, and how now they seem to conform, am I right?
Yes, they have been trapped already.
I guess so.
Because, as I said earlier, he who pays the pillar calls the tune. Systematically, after Harold, systematically, our elected politicians were taken out of unity because they obligated themselves to the system. And the system, unless we challenge it and beat it, as we did with Harold, and as we did with Kory Brown and others, even the President Obama, if they can bind the people who do the organizing for the candidates, then they can claim that they are being they're not being prejudiced, because look here, I got him. See, every time I go someplace, the mayor or the governor, they won't have a picture taken with him, right? Because then that will prove to some of them that they're all right. Well, I have to be careful, but I don't owe them anything. So I can be as independent. But if I did owe them whatever, then they could use me as a tool. But because I was indebted, they could challenge anything that I might do in opposition to them. That is what has happened. We have the talent in the Congress. We have the talent in the State House. We have the talent in our city council, but it's not unified anymore. Now that's another story, because Maddie is one of our graduates, Maddie Hunter, also, and she is an independent and behavior, because she believes in that history, also a DuSable. But we had another one of my former students from the north side, and he has been purchased. Who am I talking about? But if you say, yeah, and so that man is split with him.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But if you for sale, somebody will buy it, and he who pays the pillar calls the tune, and they have bought off. And then a lot of our talent don't know the history that I'm trying to share with you. They just don't know. So we have the talent, but it's not as concentrated and organized as it was days of my years and maybe days of your years.
So as a young man like the one who asked the question, we need you to go out there and be a politician and work for us. Arming yourself participate at programs like this. And also Kat Dow, she's been very helpful with a lot of our projects, and she enjoys our Alumni Association, the DuSable Alumni Association, and even has declared herself a fellow DuSableite.
That's right.
She's not really from DuSable.
And Senator, what's his name? State Senator, the other state senator. He just retired.
Yeah, he just retired. He went to DuSable, got
Yeah.
retired. Yes, do you have any, I'm sorry.
No, I just want, thanks for answering. I kind of, like you have the, I understand, like policy kings and other businessmen, well, a lot of businesses were financed, black businesses were financed, via, black folks with money. Okay, and so, what happened, still, why, okay, they offered a goodie bag, I understand that, the politicians, but still, other folks, why is it only the black culture who seems that? We have 19 Congress, not Congress, right in the city, aldermen, we have the majority, but the least resources. So, still there's power in numbers. I thought politics was a game of numbers, so I'm understanding.
And especially since you've been on the forefront fighting for justice and that type of thing, what kind of advice can you give us so that we can get that synergy back where we had all the productivity? We had justice in Chicago. We had business in Chicago, commerce. What can we do to light the flame under our politicians so that they will be more just and work hard for us? We see other communities working hard for their communities.
You mean organizing?
Just work hard to change our situation in housing and work, employment.
I think, again, as we did earlier with the civil rights protests and others, with Harold, with Obama, let's start at where we can be trusted by the leader and ask that person and sell that person the idea. And that is, our churches have captive audiences and they listen. Like today, I was at Father Flager's church. They were enthusiastic, at least appear to be enthusiastic, to hear an old guy like me, and Father Flager supports me. If I go to a church, which I do, Liberty Baptist Church, where A.P. Jackson was a graduate of DuSable too. That was the organizing center of Liberty. They will tell their congregations what they ought to do and what they, or either the congregation will tell them what he ought to do, because they are the base of his power. So the construction and the bringing in of those organizations, whether it's the NAACP or the Urban League, that already have bases, and uniting them as we did in the past for other organizations. And when you bring them together, they are glad that they were brought together, and they developed, like with John Johnson. We went to Ed Gardner first, and Ed Gardner's wife, by the way, she do something.
Yes.
And Ed organized the wealthy business people, as well as made a donation, a big donation to Harold Washington's campaign. And so all the big business, like John Rogers. John Rogers is not only wealthy, but he's a good guy. Now, his father went to Tilbury, but was part of the South Side of that same unity with Earl Strayhorn and Sammy Raymer and all those guys. They unified, and with the combination of wealth and knowledge and dedication, stabilized the community, because then the ordinary people began to have confidence that that leadership was going to see. So many of our younger people who don't have that advantage was asked, what difference does it make when we talk about politics? What difference does it make? All of them are bad, so I'm not going to waste my energy. Well, we have to find a way to invigorate them, and then give them the kind of success that they can transfer to their fellows. You see, the concentration of poverty in around DuSable in the late 70s and the early the high rises where no man could live in the house in those high rises if he was if he wasn't making a living, if the wife applied for welfare, if there was a man in the house over 18, she couldn't get it. And families began to fall apart, and gangs began to form, terrorizing the community. Kind of broke up that unity that some of us enjoyed early. Well, I'm going to be going to a conference in Washington tomorrow about public housing. Why not public housing if people can't pay that high price? Why not have housing which is affordable for those kind of people, and then helping the younger people in that family to see a future, because the future is in you and others like you. Well, that's one way of organizing, and organizing is the main thing. Finding out what is the problem, and then finding a way to organize and solve that problem. Education now, and crime in the streets, gun crime. Why should everybody be able to have a gun? That's what the president just suggested. Why isn't that more controllable? We have to have a community and our politicians who bring that idea to the higher members of the Congress and others, so that we can feel comfortable and safe as we used to be when I was speaking on Washington Park.
We have time for one more question. Does anyone have a question?
Or comment? Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was thinking, what would you say had the worst impact on the Black community? The proliferation of social media and mass media, television, or the drug culture and the war on drugs? Would you say the media and what they're doing and how they're using the programming, or maybe drugs, or what would you say was worse for us?
What's more harmful for us? What's really harming our community right now? What's more harmful, the drug problems or the media with all the vulgarity and the violence and the way we are pathologized, right, on the media so often that now we have this great movie out so we can look at that, but we're often pathologized, otherwise we're pathologized, we're demonized in the media, and he's wondering what has the worst influence, that or the drugs or both?
Well, the availability of the drugs, which then makes the weapons, guns, more desirable to the drug dealer, and then that terrifies other people in the community and destabilizes the community. Now, if our politicians feel that they are not threatened by that, then they won't change, and they are the target to stabilize politically that community against the drugs. But I'm not sure I answered the question right, but stabilization as it used to be for a building. And as DuSable changes, as we keep it in the name, I hope that we will encourage young people from all over the city, as far as I'm concerned, keeping the name and the spirit of that to come so that more parents will be involved in protecting their children because of the quality of education that will be available in DuSable. And we have elementary schools like Burke and Dyer that would be feeder schools for DuSable when the neighborhood seems to be a desirable place to be.
So it sounds like perhaps a young person like yourself and the other people here of all ages, we could work toward bringing stabilization back by writing these politicians once again and making their job be on the line.
That's right.
Yes, well, you know what, we're just about out of time, and I have to have Grace Dawson, she's gonna do some final remarks. And after her remarks, we're gonna play a little bit of music and we can all converse afterwards. We can still converse a little bit because the museum has to close at 5, and Mr. Black has to go get ready for his trip right away as well. So I would love to first of all, I want to thank the DuSable Museum for this wonderful forum, and I want to thank Illinois Humanities, and I want to thank the lighting and sound help that we've had. And as you do gather after Dr. Grace Dawson speaks, I would like for you to leave listening to some of the music from the DuSable High School era. And I also want to thank Bendu Peruri, who helped me so much with the audio-visual as well. So Dr. Grace Dawson.
Well, before that,
yes,
I want to express appreciation to your talents, and I hope that some of the things that I have tried to say have stimulated your thinking. It doesn't mean that you believe everything, but I hope you believe some of it, because it does come from my, not intellectual, but my living experience. Growing up 99 years on the south side of Chicago, and having been educated on the south side of Chicago academically as well as spiritually and socially and culturally, and feeling that those experiences gave me a feeling that the future was in my hands and I had to deal with it, but I had friends who liked it also, and we made a difference. And you can make a difference in wherever you happen to be at this point. But DuSable is a symbol of doing the possible. The idea, the impossible, we've done that immediately. The miraculous, we're going to do that too. Let's keep on going.
This is Dr. Grace Dawson, and she's the president of the DuSable High School Alumni Coalition for Action.
Hi, everybody. Glad to see you here. And knowing that you're here, we know we're DuSable. We know that you will be messengers and carriers back of the good news and to help us. And that's what I'm here to say these next few minutes, to help DuSable. Doesn't matter that you didn't go there. It really doesn't matter if you don't live in Brownsville. What matters is that you're a good friend, of those who do live in Bronzeville and those students who do attend DuSable. Because no man can be an island alone. We need a whole village, and you are our village. I too want to thank Tam, because Tim is a very active member of the DuSable Coalition for Action, and Alice is our vice president. Let's give Alice a big hand. Today is important because it again illustrates and enlightens us of the need, the necessity, the obligation we have in maintaining our legacy as black people in the world. And because DuSable, being the first school in Chicago, the most segregated northern city in the United States, being a place, a mecca, where black students came and learned and became successful and became role models for other students. As the years passed and different things happened in the community, we too are part of the blame. We are part of the blame because we moved out of the community and we did not become role models for those young people who had to live in the community. And now people have realized the value in the Black Belt, Bronzeville as it is now called. And so they're returning. So when I bought a house on 33rd in 1968, it cost $35,000. Now houses cost $600,000. So we have stayed there, and we have seen in the last 10 to 15 years our community change. We have also seen a change for the worse at DuSable, because the powers to be let DuSable have no large budget, and Gates came in and said a new school, a high school, should have 400 kids. So we went into small schools at DuSable. Then Gates pulled his money out, and DuSable's Board of Education, Chicago Public Schools, and I'm a former teacher, principal, and administrator in Chicago Public Schools, the money was gone. When I worked at the Board of Education in the 90s, we had a $2 billion budget. Now they have a $10 billion budget and can't keep the schools open. One of the things that happened was the specialty schools. So the neighborhood schools suffered at the hands of the specialty schools. My brother-in-law was the first principal of Whitney Young and turned it into a magnificent school. But what happened to DuSable? At DuSable, the monies were not there. So as the student population went down, then the quality of education went down. Did it just happen at DuSable? No. It happened at every neighborhood high school and almost every neighborhood elementary school. So parents sent their children to the specialty schools and the higher performance schools. So they dipped off the cream of the crop in the Chicago public schools. People who don't live in Chicago send their kids to Walter Payton, Whitney Young, North Side. They just use a different address. I don't have a problem with using a different address. I have a problem with not funding our schools appropriately. What we are fighting for at DuSable, we changed our name from the DuSable Alumni Association to the DuSable Alumni Coalition for Action. Why action? Because we intend to fight all the way. At one time, James Wagner, our first president, said things would remain better at DuSable, and if they don't, it would be over our dead bodies that we would fight. Well, you see how many dead bodies are out there now. So we're not using that thing over our dead bodies. We're using the thing as long as we have breath in our bodies. We're asking for your assistance, your understanding, because the Coalition for Action is pushing for a new DuSable. The new DuSable will have a theme that all children first would learn their history. You know, I don't have to tell you. Tim doesn't have to tell you. Alice doesn't have to tell you. If you don't know anything about your history, your legacy, your tradition, your heritage, your people, you think nothing about yourself. So you must know who you are in order to be successful. We know that our children have not been taught appropriately in most of the schools in Chicago. I can't speak for the nation. I'm only speaking for Chicago. And having worked in Chicago for 50 years, I feel very competent of speaking for Chicago. And we know that most of the schools in Chicago, African American as well as Caucasian and Hispanic children are not taught African American legacy and history. We know that. So we are determined that the new DuSable will teach our children again their history and who they are and who they can be and why they can be successful, because they're standing on the shoulders of geniuses, not just in music, not just in sports, but in academia and in every walk of life. We have products that can show that the kids who are single parents, the kids who are in welfare, the kids who live in public housing, the kids who are black, colored, Negro, or whatever you want to call them, we know that they're geniuses and that they can overcome and set the technology. You all running to see Black Panthers. Who did the technology in Black Panthers? A young black woman. And she has done all of these gadgets and gizmos and all of that. The thing that is happening now with our children, they don't realize how wonderful they are and what a wonderful background. And if you don't like yourself, you don't like anybody who looks like you. So it's no problem shooting you. There's no problem hurting you. But if we take, this gentleman asked a great question, what can happen? Stop spending 98% of your money with other people. Only 2% of the trillions of dollars in black income spent with black entrepreneurs. Just do 10%. You don't have to take it all. You can take your 90% and spend it somewhere else. 10% of your black dollars spend with black entrepreneurs so that they can make jobs for our children. We can do it. We can say, I'm going to spend my money, and you can ask the politician, the powers to be. Emmanuel wants to be reelected. Tell him, we want money for the black high schools in Chicago. Now, if I ask you to name a black high school in Chicago that's a neighborhood school that's excelling at all levels in academia, you would be able to give it to me. Because that's not. But if I ask you about the specialty schools, you can holler out 12. So we want every kid to have an education. We're not going to have boundaries for DuSable. It's not going to be from 43rd Street to 58th Street. It's a city-wide boundary. Children can apply from all over the city to come to the new DuSable. We're going to have technology in the new DuSable. We're going to have history in the new DuSable. We're going to have a world-class school. We've been fighting for a long time. Tim mentioned landmark status. Do you know how we got landmark status? Pat Dawson, when she became the alderman, was on the landmark status committee. They had told Wanda Bridgewater that you could not have landmark status because they changed the windows in the DuSable school. They don't have anything to do with landmark status. So when Pat came, and I'll continue to work with the committee, and she said, I'll help you get landmark status, and we got it. And so now the school is supposed to get monies to keep the building up. The people don't care about the building having other groups come in. The University of Chicago has bought up every vacant land that's out there in Brownsville. And they certainly would take DuSable, a large school like DuSable, and name it something, May West or whatever, and take it for their kids. We know that. We're not stupid. We're not moving the food. We know that they would protect that building. But we're not going, as long as we have breath, and as long as we have youth, we're going to see that our young people will have a place to go where they can't get into Lane Tech, they can't get into Northside, they can't get into Walter Payton, because everybody's getting into that. And everybody, you can't have 300,000 children trying to get into 12 schools. So we're going to have a school where we can have our kids. We have 500 children at DuSable. The building will hold 3,000. So, if I was counting money, and you only have 500, then why would you get all the money? We're going to put kids in DuSable. We're going to put quality programs in DuSable. We're going to offer it to the children in the community, and we're going to have parent participation. Now, if you don't have a parent, you got a guardian. So step up and get a kid on your block and say, kid, what are you doing in school? How are you doing? Not, ooh, I don't want to be near that kid. Kid, tell me something. What do you like about school? Are they treating you fairly? And they said, this person is interested in me. You live on the block, you see them. You know they're there. So talk to them, encourage them. Like that's, put them on your back. He's not too heavy. We are our brother's keepers. Carpe diem. Seize the day. Seize the moment. So that we can have children in our city with quality education who look like us. But we're not limiting the school to just us. If you're African American, yes, you're welcome. If you're Caucasian, yes, you're welcome. If you're Hispanic, yes, you're welcome. Those who apply and meet our criteria, and the criteria is not the score, not in the 95th percentile. Most of the kids who go to those other schools, they're in the 95th percentile, or they're in the 90th percentile. And we're getting ready in our community. Most of you know where Hardigan School on 40th and Root is becoming a classical school. Do you think only the kids from Brownsville are going to be going there? No. Classical schools accept kids from across the city. Who do you think is going to be coming there? Not because they're scared to come to 41st State, but because they're going to be getting a quality education. We want to be the school at DuSable that takes those kids from 41st and Root, the Brownsville, that's what they're calling it right now, they're going to change the name, the Brownsville Classical School. We want those children to have a place to come to in the neighborhood. There are 70 children in Brownsville who have been tested at the kindergarten and second grade level who qualify to go into a classical school. We're telling our principal, whoever it's going to be, and we're telling our people, we want kids from Brownsville in that classical school. They can come from almost whenever, because classical has no boundaries. But we're going to insist that the kids from Brownsville get into that school and get that kind of education. That's what the parents want for us. So help us, pray for us, work with us, support us. And when you go out to vote for a politician, what is it, March 20th? March 20th. Ask yourself, is this politician a favorite of education? Is this politician a person who thinks about our people? Or is this politician one who only thinks of himself and his family, or herself? That's what I'm saying. And believe me, there are good people out there, and there are good people in politics. But if we don't demand it, we won't get it. Carpe diem.
Thank you.